Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Let us begin our second day of our COP5. First, I would like to thank Switzerland for the excellent reception yesterday evening. It was more than welcomed by everybody, and I saw that the good spirit that was in the plenary continued to play important role at the reception, so thank you for that. So before we start our work today, allow me to remind you that we should all be guided by the UN System Code of Conduct to enable our COP to be a space where everyone can participate in an inclusive, respectful, and safe manner. All participants are expected to behave with integrity and respect towards each other and ensure zero tolerance to harassment. As such, I ask for everyone's cooperation in this matter, and I'm fully confident that you will understand my request. Okay, so in order to orient us for today, I would like to begin with an outline of the plan for today. First, I would like to invite the co-chair of the contact group on Annexes A and B to update us on the work and progress of their group. I understand that the group worked actively and productively yesterday. After hearing from the co-chairs of the contact group, I will reopen the agenda item 4C on ASGM that we were not able to conclude yesterday. Then, we will turn to agenda item 6, Program of Work and Budget. Following that, I will call on Cheryl Eugene Saint-Romain, Chair of the Credentials Committee, to give us an update on the credentials received by now. Then, we will move on into substantive items for today, namely, first, to take up agenda item 4J on national reporting, then agenda item 4I on the work of the Implementation and Compliance Committee. Then we move on to the agenda item 4A on mercury supply sources and trade. I trust this overview on the morning session is clear to you, and in the afternoon, as outlined in the tentative schedule for this evening meeting, we will continue with consideration of other substantive agenda items. Let me remind you that there were requests to take the floor yesterday, and I will first give the floor to parties, then non-parties, observers, and then observers. Before I proceed to call on the co-chairs, may I ask the Secretariat to let us know of any housekeeping information. Secretariat?
Thank you and good morning. Briefly to remind you of some of the items covered yesterday, very briefly, please kindly do not change your seat that has been designated to you because the nameplate and the microphone are configured. As you know, all documents for this meeting can be accessed from the COP5 page on the Minamata Convention website. And there you'll find all the pre-session documents, including working and information documents. You will further find the following 3 tabs, and these are in the password-protected site for the meeting. These are in session, contact groups, and statements and others. These are what in some previous meetings in the past we used to call the intranet, but it's really a part of our website that is password protected, so it's technically not an intranet, but hopefully it will function for you in quite the same way. Please let us know if you have any questions about that. The password is on your badge and also on the slide we're about to show. Great. Regarding interventions, delegations are encouraged, again, to make concise interventions and to facilitate interpretation. You can send them ahead of delivery to Nadia Omar, as shown on the screen, and for statements and other information that is to be uploaded to the statements site in the password-protected area. Those go to the MEA-Minamata-CRP@UN.org mailbox. And conference room papers also go to that same mailbox. For DSA payments, DSA will be distributed today again during coffee breaks and lunchtime at the Espace Wangari on floor 2. A special event will be held today during the lunch period entitled Mercury in Cosmetics, More Than What Meets the Eye, co-hosted by the JEF and UNEP. Takes place in room A from 13:15 to 14:45. With that, I thank you.
Thank you very much, Secretariat. I now turn to invite the co-chairs of the contact group on Annexes A and B to report on the work of the group and the progress made. Itsuki Kuroda, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Good morning, colleagues. The contact group on Annex A and B met twice yesterday from 4 to 6 p.m. and from 7 to 10 p.m. I would like to highlight first that the contact group went in a very constructive and cooperative manner and made a remarkable progress. I would like to thank the participants first. In accordance with the mandate given by the President and the interventions made in the plenary, the approach taken by the group was to first consider the Part 1 of Annex A item altogether. Therefore, the group addressed the 4 product categories and their phase-out years, which were carried over from COP4, namely the batteries, switches, relays, and lightings, including the new proposal submitted by the African group. I am happy to report that there was support for listing virtually all the items apart from one item requiring some further discussion and another one requiring some further clarification. Regarding dates, the group was able to narrow the options and in some instances could reach agreement on the dates to recommend to the plenary. As regards the proposal for the cosmetics and the dental amalgam for both Part 1 and Part 2 of Annex 1, the group still has some issues to resolve, and we look forward to returning to these items in our next session. I am also happy to report that the group reached agreement on the listing in the Part 1 of Annex B of polyurethane manufacturing using mercury-based catalyst with a phase-out date of 2025. Finally, the group was also mandated to consider whether the COP would like to be able to establish that the technically and economically feasible alternatives are available for the production of vinyl chloride monomer and sodium and potassium methylate and ethylate. The group was making a good progress on 2 productions, and an agreement was reached, but one party indicated that it wished to revisit one of the production when it suspended its work at 10 p.m. In summary, my co-chair and I are very happy with the progress made by the contact group and appreciate again all the constructive intervention made by the participants. We are confident that this momentum can be maintained when the group reconvenes. We are in your hand as to when that might be. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you very much, and I'm glad to hear that you progressed well with the task, and it is very encouraging for all of us to see this progress, and I'm very pleased also. So thank you, the co-chairs and the entire group for the work done so far. And I do understand there are still need for the group to meet to address the remaining matters. So in this regard, I invite the group to continue its work and resume the work now and until 12:45 in the same room, room A. But please be ready to finish by the indicated time, 12:45, so there is time to prepare a room for an event that is taking place in the same room. Thank you very much. And now please use this time to advance the work on the annexes as much as possible and start finalizing it, as we plan to deliberate on some technical issues related to Mercury this afternoon, which may also require additional work during the COP. Thank you. Okay, then now I propose to reopen agenda item 4C on ASGM and continue with the list of speakers for parties as anticipated at the end of afternoon plenary yesterday. I will open the floor after that for observers, and I would like to reopen the floor for interventions from party on the draft decision on artisanal and small-scale gold mining as contained in document 6. After that, I will open the floor for intervention on CRP 1. I recall that yesterday, end of time, I had on my list the following parties who had requested the floor. I'm going to list them and then please press the button in order to activate your microphone. So the parties are Nigeria, Indonesia, United States of America, Burkina Faso, Australia, Brazil, Mexico, Japan, and Chile. I will take the first intervention on a draft decision on artisanal and small-scale gold mining as contained in document 6 now from Indonesia. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Indonesia highly appreciates the esteemed Secretariat for conducting a study to learn the needs and priorities of indigenous people and local communities adversely affected by mercury pollution from artisanal and small-scale gold mining activities. Hence, we are also grateful for the successful work of the Secretariat, which has prepared a technical document for monitoring mercury around the artisanal and small-scale gold mining activities location to measure mercury pollution. Regarding the National Action Plan, which must be prepared by state parties in accordance with Article 7 of the Minamata Convention, Indonesia proudly stated that it has submitted the plan, which contains a strategy to eliminate the use of mercury in the artisanal and small-scale gold mining for the esteemed Secretariat. In the process of eliminating mercury in the artisanal and small-scale gold mining to the esteemed Secretariat, Indonesia has continuously involved the local community in implementing the action plan and has been working to develop alternatives to the miners' livelihood. We highly appreciate the esteemed Secretariat for their contribution in facilitating the capacity building program and encourage parties to exchange information regarding the elimination of mercury in the artisanal and small-scale gold mining. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you very much, Indonesia, for your intervention. Next on my list is Nigeria, followed by Australia.
Thank you, Madam President, and good morning, distinguished and delegates. Nigeria acknowledges and appreciates the effort of the Secretariat and the work done so far in the implementation of Article 7 of the Convention. We believe that the implementation of Article 7 on artisanal and small-scale gold mining is key to achieving the objective of the Convention, and it's also imperative to contributing to the goals and targets of the Kumi Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. We note the importance of the effective engagement and participation of indigenous peoples, local communities, and other stakeholders in the development and implementation of National Action Plan on artisanal and small-scale gold mining, and the need to prepare a supplemental session on it in the guidance document on developing a National Action Plan to reduce and, where feasible, eliminate mercury use in artisanal and small-scale gold mining. Madam President, Nigeria has developed a National Action Plan to reduce and, where feasible, eliminate mercury use in artisanal and small-scale gold mining, which was concluded, submitted to the Secretariat, and officially presented to the public in May 2021. We are pleased to be part of the 23 countries that are participating in the JEF-funded Plenary Good program. Presently, we are concluding an arrangement with the United Nations Industrial Development Organization to kickstart the implementation of the project in Nigeria. Nigeria, therefore, is in general support of the element of the draft decision in the annex of documents UNEP/MC/COP.5/6. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you very much, Nigeria. Next on my list, I have Australia, followed by Brazil. Please.
Thank you, Madam President, for giving Australia the floor. While our domestic situation does not trigger obligations under Article 7.3 relating to the development of national action plans for ASGM, given the significant contribution of ASGM to mercury pollution globally and the disproportionate impact it has on our Pacific Island neighbours, Australia supports efforts to better implement Article 7 of the Convention and particularly supports efforts to integrate financing for projects and programs across multilateral fora to facilitate mutually beneficial outcomes, such as biodiversity conservation. While I have the floor, Madam President, I wish to thank the Gulak region for demonstrating inspiring leadership by bringing forward the CRP on Indigenous peoples. We are proud to co-sponsor this important proposal along with Canada. In Australia, we have a saying, take care of country and country will take care of you. Proposals such as this respect the wealth of knowledge and values the cultures and traditional practices that Indigenous peoples and local communities bring to addressing global challenges such as mercury pollution. Given the significance of this matter and its global scale, Australia firmly believes the matter of mercury pollution and Indigenous peoples and local communities warrants a dedicated discussion, not only at this COP, but also COPs going forward. Australia sees this proposal as the beginning of the journey. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you very much, Australia, for your words. I have Brazil on my list, followed by Guinea. Brazil, please.
Can you hear me? Thank you, Madam Chair, to give me the floor again. Yesterday, I intervened on behalf of the GRULAC. Now I take the floor on national capacity. Brazil is fully committed to the implementation of Article 7 of the Convention. Since it took office last January, our new government has spared no efforts in combating the illegal extraction of gold, including inside indigenous land, as well as combating the long-lasting effects of the mercury used therein. Our government has mobilized important resources to ensure that healthcare services reach remote areas, far from hospitals and other urban facilities. The special care for indigenous peoples is not only the response to a humanitarian crisis, it's part of a new and broad political approach to the indigenous peoples of our country, materialized by the establishment of the Ministry of Indigenous Peoples and the presence of indigenous persons in other positions of the government, including in our delegation to this COP. Brazil was proud to host the first consultation meeting between the Secretariat and representatives of indigenous peoples and local communities suffering from the effects of mercury produced by ASGM last month. That meeting gave us the opportunity to hear firsthand the testimony of those most affected by mercury pollution including a young indigenous woman who is reluctant to get pregnant for fear that her baby may develop health problems. As reinforce our institutions in charge of enforcing domestic legislation, we are also strengthening the governance of the mechanism related to the implementation of the Convention, including the elaboration of our National Action Plan for small-scale gold mining, pursuant to Article 7.3. Just recently, our government recreated the National Commission for Chemical Safety, coordinated by the Ministry of the Environment and Climate Change and composed of 30 institutions. Considering all that, we support not only the CRP introduced yesterday on the effects of mercury pollution on indigenous peoples and on local communities, but also the draft decision proposed by the Secretary under Document 6, implementation of Article 7 of the Minamata Convention on Mercury, Artisanal and Small-Scale Gold Mining. Finally, we join Australia in the view that those most affected by mercury pollution should merit in future COP or future COPs an agenda item of its own, given the importance this matter gains for the benefit of all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brazil. I have Guinea on my list, followed by United States of America.
C'est la Guinée ou les États-Unis?
So, is it Guinea or the United States first? No, it's Guinea.
Merci, Madame.
Thank you, Madam President. Guinea, just as other speakers here, would like to express our gratitude to all those who, from near or far, have contributed to the successful holding of this meeting. Madam President, my intervention bears on clarification the party states to the Minamata Convention, such as Guinea, have successfully profited from assistance for the initial assistance of mercury sources, and the National Action Plan which has shown that the ASGM is the first source of mercury pollution in Guinea, and we are concerned that the implementation of that plan, well, it needs to be put in place through programs and projects, but it happens that there's a lot of time, 2 or 3 years, between the development of a plan and its implementation. We belong to sub-regional organizations such as the African Union and ECOWAS, which are guided by the principle of the free circulation of people and goods. So if only yesterday, we had the problem at national level, after the past 2 years, the issue has taken on an international dimension, because during our latest review of gold mining sites, we have noticed the presence of many other nationalities for whom the mining code or the environmental code don't carry much water, because ECOWAS insists on free circulation. Well, there's a clear need to review certain data in order to justify much of this activity. What brings us added value, what we are asking all of the participants, our country borders with 6 other countries, mutual accusations are flying, and we need to pin it down, the source of mercury, because there are certain countries which are non-parties, and we'd like to raise this issue here. in order to profit from your advice and support from the Secretariat. Is it possible to share for the neighboring NAPs between the neighboring countries in order to take adequate measures? That's our concern. Because, well, we can work on reducing mercury when we know its sources and when we know who is responsible. But we are taught to do reductions at national level, but it doesn't apply to our neighbours, particularly those who are not parties to the Minamata Convention. So we do need your advice and your assistance. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Guinea. Next on my list is United States. After this intervention, I'm closing the list of parties because I have maybe, okay. Well, it's going good. So I'm not closing the list. United States followed by Japan.
Thank you, Madam President. The United States strongly supports efforts to strengthen the process of developing, implementing, and reviewing national action plans, and sees these efforts as the cornerstone of implementing Article 7. This includes working with parties and non-parties where applicable to support their national action plan work and funding from the GEF. The United States supports indigenous rights and the importance of including indigenous peoples and other stakeholders in the development, implementation, and review of national action plans. The United States generally supports the draft decision, but has suggested edits to paragraphs 2, 5, and 7. Finally, we would like to intervene on the CRP when you indicate it's at the appropriate time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, Japan, followed by Burundi.
Thank you, Madam President, for giving us the floor. Japan would like to thank the Secretariat in preparing the documents on the implementation of Article 7. Japan has continued to support developing countries in tackling the pollution caused by the artisanal and small-scale gold mining. Therefore, we sincerely acknowledge the importance of the draft decision. Particularly, we support making the most of the Global Environmental Facility Scheme for the ASGM countermeasure, which is described in the paragraph 4 of the draft decision as a top donor of the Global Environmental Facility. In this context, Madam President, Japan would suggest one minor language change. Paragraph 4 says currently, calls upon parties and the Global Environmental Facility to redouble efforts to seek opportunities to advance implementation of Article 7. But we believe the word redouble would not often be used in such a decision, such a context. So Japan would like to suggest rephrasing it from redouble efforts to make further efforts. It means calls upon parties and the Global Environmental Facility to make further effort to seek opportunities, blah, blah, blah. So it would be more general expression. So thank you for your kind consideration, Madam President. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Japan, for your kind words. I have Burundi, followed by Mauritania.
Merci, Madame.
Thank you, Madam President. Burundi supports the Secretariat's proposal on the implementation of Article 7 of the Convention of Burundi through support projects and capacity strengthening. Has been working hard on the implementation of the Minamata Convention on Mercury with the help of our Ministry of the Environment, Agriculture, and with the support of all the groups of population affected by the mercury issue. We need financial and technical support to develop our NAP. as well as to assist in its implementation with regards to mercury issues and the projects involving neighboring countries with which we also need to coordinate national action plans and coordinate the use of mercury in their products. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Burundi. Mauritania, and after that, the microphone goes to Panama. So Mauritania, please, you have the floor.
Merci,
Thank you, Madam President. Good morning, colleagues. Mauritania, just like a number of other countries of the world, have to deal with the grave consequences of gold mining on the health of our populations. I'm not going to repeat the questions that have already been raised by colleagues, but I'd like to touch on an aspect which is particular to our country, I believe, linked to the treatment of the residue of gold mining, which poses a serious problem for Mauritania. In fact, the residue generated by gold mining have significantly grown, have seen an upsurge as a result of industrial activity. And so the Ministry of the Environment has been trying to review the situation in order to streamline the use of mercury, first of all, in gold mining, and on the other hand, to streamline the quantities of gold recovered from that residue, as well as to recover a large part of mercury, added mercury in the residue. But the problem that we are facing, that we can recover significant amounts of mercury, but in order to manage them at the national level, we have a problem. Well, we don't know where to find the place in our debate, the question of recovering mercury and how it can be processed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mauritania. Panama, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Since this is the first time we take the floor, I would like, on behalf of the government of Panama, congratulate you and the government of Switzerland and the Secretariat for the excellent work done. And I'd also like to thank the government of Switzerland for its support of the Minamata Convention. I'd also like to greet all parties and official observers. I think it's important that we take into account ASJM in our national maps and provide the financing that is necessary to prevent the flow of mercury. There are vulnerable communities, and studies in Panama have shown that average children have 7 more chances that see their health destroyed than children elsewhere. I am pleased to see the inclusion of the indigenous people in the decision-making process regarding ASGM, since these are vulnerable populations and primarily women, children, and pregnant women. That is why all the mapping plans should include strategies to protect vulnerable populations, as is stated in Article 16, addressing the issue of health in the convention. I think it's important that we provide follow-up within the overall context of ASGM. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Panama. I see Senegal. Please, you have the floor.
Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much, Madam President. Given that Senegal is taking the floor for the first time, the delegation of Senegal would like, first of all, to thank the Swiss government for their warm welcome. Our gratitude also goes to the Secretariat for the organization of this important meeting. Madam President, I'm inviting the Secretariat to favor cooperation among countries and to bring out synergies through regional projects in order, in particular, to implement Article 7. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Senegal. I have on my list United Republic of Tanzania, if I'm not mistaken. If yes, you have the floor.
Hello. Thank you, Madam President. We all agree that we all understand that artisanal and small-scale gold mining is the largest consumer of mercury, especially for Tanzania, which the ASGM ranks on the among of the most economic activities. So Tanzania is among the top 3 countries in Africa with most of significant number of people depending on the use of mercury for daily basis, and more than about 5 million people are directly engaging on the XGM activities, with majority depending on it for support. Despite of this, mercury is one of the major components that is used as a major component that is used for processing of the gold, and this contributes significantly on the mercury releases, but also on the pollution of the surrounding environment. According to our National Action Plan, which was made on 2020 and is being implemented, whereby to current we have a number of actions that have been put in place. However, we are still calling for the regional cooperation, as most of the ASGM activities that are taking place in the region include movement of ASGM from one country to another, and therefore, which means the assistance is highly required to tackle the problem at the regional level, and this will at least assist that the ASGM activities are considered to be taken place to ensure that the pollution, but also the technology transfer is also established within the region. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you very much, Tanzania. I have Ecuador on my list, followed by Suriname.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, for giving us the floor this morning. And since it's the first time that we take the floor, I would like to thank the government of Switzerland for its warm welcome, and I'd like to thank the Secretariat for organizing this important event. Madam Chair, I'd also like to refer to the National Action Plan on Mercury in relation to ASGM, provide figures for 2020, as well as our firm commitment to reduce and gradually ban the use of mercury in extractive mining in order to establish adequate environmental management while safeguarding the systems and the livelihoods of the population. We support the CRP document on ASGM, and we would like to restate Ecuador's commitment to conduct the necessary actions in order to jointly work with other representatives of indigenous peoples and communities during the implementation of the National Action Plan. We also intend to work on updating of the measures of ASGM in our own country. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Next is Suriname, and after that I'm going to close the list for the parties, and we will move on with observers. So Suriname, please, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. As Suriname takes the floor for the first time, we would like to extend our gratitude to the Secretariat for preparing the draft decision related on artisanal and small-scale gold mining. We express our gratitude to the Minamata Secretariat to their unwavering efforts to raise awareness about the harmful effects of mercury in the ASEAN sector. Suriname made a global pledge to control and address the use of mercury and committed to protect the environment and human health, the ecosystem integrity, biodiversity, its natural waters and forest resources for the current and future generations from the adverse effects of mercury. Subsequent ratification to the convention, where the formative actions taken in recognition of its commitment to sustainable development through environmental management and responsible mining, fostering safer indigenous and tribal people communities and healthier people. One of the stipulations of this convention, according to Article 7, is the National Action Plan, which Suriname is currently finalizing and is taking steps to submit its National Action Plan in the early first quarter of 2024 as proof to its commitment and compliance to the Convention. The result of the NAP is the outcome of engagement with several key stakeholders, with the contribution and engagement of indigenous and tribal people communities that aligns with the free, prior, informed consent principles and considerable work with the active participation of entities within the government. We also like to express our gratitude to the Secretariat of the Minamata, ensuring the involvement and full concerns of indigenous and local community in addressing ASGM within their territories. We would also like to extend our appreciation to the effort of countries that already submitted their NAP, with special thanks to the support of the JEF in assisting parties, which is crucial, and we must embrace this act in order to protect the global environment. Our endeavor is to press forward, making sure that the NAP will be effectively executed on the short, mid, and long term with the collaboration of projects and programs and making use of inclusive and sustainable solutions adopted for the conservation, restoration, and use of ecosystem and natural resources to create an enabling environment for the dissemination of environmental responsible mining practices and technologies. With the approach we have in mind and in line with our commitment to the principles of the Minamata Convention, we agree in the preparedness to adopt the decision on ASGM. Thank you very much, Madam President.
Thank you very much, Suriname. In the spirit of compromise and collaboration that actually guided yesterday all the meeting, I'm going to allow Mexico to take the floor also because it's a legacy from yesterday. But after that, I'm going to close the list for parties and we will move on to observers. So Mexico, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Mexico would like to thank the Secretariat for the documents related to RASGM. And in light of the conclusions within the framework of the initial evaluation of the Minamata Convention, Mexico has stated that ASGM is a very important activity in our country, or more than insignificant activity. Since then, we've established a baseline which allows us to identify the areas where such activities are conducted, as well as the number of people participating in ASGM, with the purpose of reducing the risk to the health and to the environment. With financing from GEF and the support of UNEP, Mexico has drafted a national action plan as established by Annex 7 of the Minamata Convention. In our NAP, we include a series of specific measures for the gradual elimination of ASGM, and we intend to also strengthen public policies in this regard. So far, we have studied the gaps and alternatives throughout the world, so as to identify the indicators that have the greatest impact and that can influence Mexican public policy. By comparing public policies, we can also look at the various challenges that ASMGM poses at regional level. In this regard, Mexico would like to recognize the involvement of the Secretariat in the Human Rights Council session number 51, and also the role of the Special Rapporteur on Human Rights in the area of rational environmental management in regard to dangerous substances, and in particular in regard to mercury in the use of ASGM, and how all this relates to human rights. Ultimately, Mexico is one of the co-sponsors of the CRP presented by Brazil and other state parties, because we are convinced that the indigenous peoples are particularly affected by exposure to mercury, and also the first people who are faced with the serious health effects and the effects on the environment due to mercury pollution. As a result, this conference should respond to the most urgent necessities of the native peoples in regard to these problems. Thank you very much for giving us the floor.
Before I turn to observers, I would like to ask the United States of America to read out, 1 second, it's a problem here, yes, to read out suggested changes in dictation speed. If it's possible, please, US, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I would be happy to do so if you wish, although it would be rather lengthy to read out in plenary. But if you would like me to, I'm happy to. Okay. And I would be happy to read these out and then send them to the Secretary to ensure that everything is captured. So we would, starting with operative paragraph 2, we would simply change the verb from encourages to calls upon, just as in paragraph 1. And then following down to paragraph 5, subparagraph A, we would propose to replace the language in subparagraph A with, so we would strike the whole subparagraph and replace it with engage with indigenous and local communities to ensure the engagement of the indigenous and local communities in the formalization process.
Could you please repeat?
Yes, the alternative language would say engage with indigenous and local communities to ensure the engagement of the indigenous and local communities in the formalization process. And then in subparagraph B, we would also present an alternative to this paragraph. So we would strike the language drafted and we would replace it with protect and strengthen the access of indigenous and local communities to traditional livelihoods and cultural practices, and where appropriate, develop and promote alternative economic activities. And I can pause there and see if I should repeat or if that's okay. It's okay? All right.
No, please repeat.
Oh, please repeat. Excuse me. Okay, so the alternative again is protect and strengthen the access to, protect and strengthen the access of indigenous and local communities to traditional livelihoods and cultural practices, and where appropriate, develop and promote alternative economic activities. And shall I move on, Madam President? Okay. And our lastly, we would also present an alternative paragraph, so a 7 alt, I suppose, which would read, so striking paragraph 7 and replacing it with encourages parties to work with their respective indigenous peoples and local communities with regard to their needs and priorities in relation to the use of mercury in artisanal and small-scale gold mining, and request the Secretariat to, subject to the availability of resources, support party efforts to raise awareness among Indigenous peoples and local communities of the risks associated with mercury use in artisanal and small-scale gold mining. And that's all, Madam President, but if you need me to repeat anything, I will do so.
The last one.
So the last sentence?
Yes.
The last bit says, to raise awareness among Indigenous peoples and local communities of the risks associated with mercury use in artisanal and small-scale gold mining. So as I said, I will send all this to the Secretariat to ensure that all of the changes were read in correctly. Thank you.
Thank you very much, US. Okay, now I'm going to turn to organizations, and let me first give the floor to the Indigenous people organizations. Please, you have the floor.
Thank you, thank you, Madam Chair. We Indigenous peoples from 6 different countries here in COP5 would like to present our concerns and proposals regarding ASGM and mercury contamination to our traditional territories, health, and rights. The high vulnerability of our peoples is recognized by the Convention as contamination by mercury of our traditional livelihoods like food, water, and forests. In the Amazon, where I come from, these activities are mostly carried out illegally and are expanding unchecked, contaminating our bodies, our babies, and depriving the next generations from a healthy life, generating violence and social conflicts among our families. Our people are being persecuted, criminalized, threatened, and murdered for defending our rights and territories. One of the main issues to address is the lack of systematized information and specific data of the real dimensions of the social, cultural, spiritual, and environmental impacts on Indigenous peoples and their territories. We need to call attention for what is happening with Indigenous peoples so we can take proper action for a future free of mercury. In this context, we hereby state, 1, access to regional monitoring programs and collection of specific data regarding the contaminated territories with the direct participation of Indigenous peoples and proper capacity building. Second, the national action plans need to be developed in all the phases with effective participation of Indigenous peoples, respecting our rights, especially the free, prior, informed consent with all the community members, respecting self-governing organizations and representative structures, including Indigenous women and youth. Legal security for the recovery and legalization of Indigenous lands and ancestral territories. Fourth, creating programs to recover and protect our territories, water, and food sovereignty from the contamination of mercury. Fifth, enforcing actions to track, control mercury and gold supply from the extraction to distribution from illegal mining in our territories. Sixth, stopping any illegal and unconsented mining activities, evicting miners and all illegal activities associated in Indigenous territories, and guarantee proper actions to protect our lands from mining invasion. 7, guaranteeing the right to indigenous peoples' health, both to prevent the treat mercury adverse effects, considering our cultural specificities, especially from pregnant women and children. We need a specific prevention, mitigation, and elimination actions with transformation and structural changes in development and economic models. We strongly encourage all parties to adopt the CRP1 proposed by GRULAC with the support of Australia and Canada. We do not want to be the new Minamata. Thanks.
Thank you very much for your words. I also recognize International Indian Treaty Council on my speakers list. You have the floor.
On behalf of International Indian Treaty Council, an organization of indigenous people affiliated in 4 UN regions, some greatly impacted by both legacy mines as well as current ASGN sites. We begin by citing the relevant article of the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, Article 29/2, which says, states shall take effective measures to ensure that no storage or disposal of hazardous materials should take place in the lands or territories of indigenous peoples without their free, prior, and informed consent. Mercury from ASGM has contaminated our lands and waterways, our traditional food systems, our women and babies. The neurological damage to children near ASGM contaminated sites represents severe health and cultural impacts, such as barriers in relating our language, stories, and traditional ecological knowledge, impacting our future generations. We retired the call by the UN Special Rapporteur on the Human Rights and Toxics in his study titled Mercury, Small-Scale Gold Mining and Human Rights, regarding ASGN, including adopting a national strategy to eliminate the use of mercury in small-scale gold mining, informed by human rights-based principles, and identifying, restoring, and conducting cleanup of contaminated sites, including rivers and waterways. We therefore call upon states to respect and uphold the UN Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. Finally, it is time to end the global trade in mercury. Most mercury being traded finds its ways into ASGM, the leading source of global mercury emissions. Let's come together to truly make mercury history with these important steps. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your words. I also have on my list the Inuit Circumpolar Council. You have the floor.
Kuyainaini, and good morning, Madam President. ICC would also like to congratulate you on your nomination and election. My name is Herb Nakamayak. I'm the Vice President of Inuit Circumpolar Council Canada. Madam President, Inuit Circumpolar Council advocates on behalf of around 180,000 Inuit living in the Arctic. Inuit are still net recipients of elevated mercury concentrations in some of our country foods, which are vital to our health and well-being. We welcome the CRP1 submitted by GRULAC, Australia, and Canada. We would like to point out that the Inuit have been involved in the development of the Minamata Convention from very beginning stages, and the Arctic is mentioned as a region that is particularly vulnerable. Inuit have extensive experience in monitoring contaminants in our homelands. For example, within the Northern Contaminants Program in Canada, the Arctic Monitoring and Assessment Program, as well as subnational monitoring programs in our regions. These programs recognize that Indigenous peoples need to be involved in all stages of research, including the management of the programs. It needs to be recognized that Indigenous peoples are not stakeholders, Madam President, we're rights holders, and that we have the right to self-determination, also with regards to research going on in our lands. Research needs to be based not only on science, but also our indigenous knowledge, which provides crucial information, guidance about the ecosystem and understanding of mercury exposure in our traditional country foods. Madam President, we'll continue to provide our expertise and experiences moving forward in the implementation of the Minamata Convention and to support our Indigenous brothers and sisters similarly affected by mercury contamination and call for enabling funds to support this work. Madam President, tomorrow we will host a knowledge lab at 2 p.m. in room 1 and we invite you to attend. Kuyunani, Madam President, thank you.
Thank you very much. The last speaker on my list is International Pollutants Elimination Network. Just because of the screen, I just want to confirm that this is the right person. So, IPEN, can you confirm that you requested the floor?
I'm here.
Yeah. Okay, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I'm speaking on behalf of IPEN, a network of more than 600 public interest NGOs in over 120 countries working for a toxic-free future. Many of us assisted SGM-impacted communities, such as my organization, Nexus 3 in Indonesia. IPEN welcomes efforts and progress that all stakeholders have contributed to the SGM sector. 10 years after the treaty entered into force, many countries with SGM have received information, technical support, and capacity building to substitute mercury with other practices, including the shift to cyanide and other chemicals. However, this shift needs to be supported by strong regulations and measures on chemical safety and environmental protection. In 2022, the UN Human Rights Council Resolution 48/13 acknowledged the right to live in a clean and healthy environment as a fundamental human right. Further, in 2022, the UN Special Rapporteur for Toxics and Human Rights report highlighted the human rights violations and the environmental injustice suffered by the indigenous peoples as a result of mercury use in SGM. Vulnerable populations, children, women, and peoples with disabilities suffer the most from mercury pollution. Therefore, IPEN supports the submissions of CRP1 proposed by GRULAC and encourage parties to intensify programs under Article 16 on health aspects. We noted that the guidance on managing contaminated sites has already adopted at COP3. However, many activities that have promoted the replacement of mercury with other chemicals focused on producing gold with little attention to assessing the mercury contamination in the same sites. We observed that environmental monitoring and biomonitoring in SGM areas are still lacking. Data and information regarding mercury-contaminated sites and health monitoring are the main lessons learned from Minamata more than 60 years ago. With current status of knowledge and technology, mercury pollution and mercury poisoning should be and could be prevented. Attention also should be paid to addressing technical issues to manage contaminated gold processing equipment, such as ball mills, sluice boxes, gold burning units, or kiosks. Parties must prohibit the use of tailings contaminated by mercury for other purposes. Mercury is used briefly in SGM, but leaves a long-lasting impact on the communities, the ecosystem, and biodiversity. Lastly, fundamentally, Article 7 on SGM should not have been listed as use allowed in Article 2K in this treaty. IPEN would like to invite delegates to consider amending this article at COP6. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you very much, IPEN. Well, I see that parties are indeed making great efforts to address the use of mercury in ASGM and also are interested in further considering ways to support the implementation of Article 7. I'm also encouraged by many positive views expressed by a number of parties and observers. In the light of views expressed here and the comments received so far, the COP is in a position to move forward on this matter. I will request the Secretariat to prepare a conference room paper reflecting the views expressed here. This item will be then brought back to plenary after you have had an opportunity to review the CRP. Are there any objections? Yes, please. Kenya.
Thank you, Madam President. And just to clarify, it is not an objection, only that we were also on the waiting list. I think somehow the system did not pick us. Madam President, can I proceed and give my remarks on behalf of Kenya? Thank you, Madam President. Kenya appreciates the financial support of the JEF and the Secretariat in her development of the national action plans and the implementation of the Planet Gold project. Kenya also acknowledges the need to update the NAP, which is due for revision in 2024. And Kenya also acknowledges the need for actors such as WHO to support countries in implementing the public health strategy for artisanal and small-scale gold mining as provided in the NAPs. The Kenyan delegation calls on the convention to support developing countries in advancing suitable best available technology and best environmental practices in managing mercury-contaminated tailing. Thank you, Madam President, for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Kenya. So going back to my proposal, that the Secretariat will draft the CRP for your attention. Do I see any objections? Okay, if not, it is so decided. Thank you very much. Then now I would like to invite interventions from the floor on CRP1, which, if you recall, was proposed by GRULAC region and co-sponsored by Australia and Canada. I will give the priority to parties first, then observers. So I'm opening the floor. Okay, first intervention comes from European Union. You have the floor.
Buenos días, señora Presidenta.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Thank you very much for giving the floor to the EU and its member states. We would like to thank GRULAC Australia and Canada for the document, and we consider very important to promote the dissemination of mercury's impacts among indigenous peoples and local communities. We also believe it's important to promote involvement and participation of indigenous peoples in the Minamata Convention. In this connection, we therefore support the proposal, although we would like to suggest some minor modifications in the same, which we will be providing to the Secretariat in writing so that they can be taken into account. Thank you.
Thank you very much, you. Do you think it's possible just to read it out loud, but in a dictation mode, and then send it, of course, to the Secretariat also?
Muchas gracias.
Thank you again, Madam Chair. In the first paragraph of the EU's proposal and the EU's member states, we would like to replace the word reaffirming with the word recalling. Later on in the text, after the mention of the year 1992, we would like to suggest deleting the word particularly, its principles 10 and 22. Further down the text, in the paragraph which starts with encourages parties to support as appropriate participation of indigenous peoples, we would, in that paragraph, like to add the word and organizations. These would be our amendments. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Very much, you. Next on my list, I have United States of America. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. And I apologize, I do have a question. I was a bit confused. I thought you were suggesting we establish a contact group on the CRP, but should I instead be reading in edits that I have to the decision here, or to the CRP1? I'd appreciate clarification on that, Madam President.
Okay, so US, my question to you is, what type of comments do you have? They are extensive, or we can read it out, or they need more discussions, or just give us an impression about the type of comments you have on this, please.
Thank you, Madam President. I think our comments are not very extensive. They're certainly less extensive than the ones I read in the last CRP, and we're generally quite supportive of this and appreciate the leadership of Brazil and the other proponents of the CRP. However, I think what is challenging for us now is having other changes in the decision CRP read in. I think it's a bit hard for us to understand the whole picture, to read our changes in and understand how they may fit in or may contradict what was read in earlier. So I think it might, I mean, if that's your preference, I would be happy to read them in, but I also think it might be easier for us to have some sort of, maybe just a larger group or a smaller group to discuss this. This is a very important issue, and it's one that we think is worthy of consideration, but it's also, this is not something that we had seen before the COP, so it's not something that we have had as much time to prepare for. So I'm a little bit reluctant to just read in changes here and you know, also try to understand the changes that were read in earlier and you know, so I'm in your hands, Madam President, but so I will read them in if you wish, but it might be more productive for us to have some discussions about this in some sort of, on the margins or in some small group. Thank you.
Thank you very much, US. Okay, just to have more time to decide on this, I would like to give the floor to Chile now, and then I will draw the conclusion. Please.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I think it would be very important for us to be acquainted with the observations made by the United States. I see that the observations presented by Spain on behalf of the European Union are not substantive comments about the text, and thus we could maybe address them rather quickly. However, we would like to hear from the United States in more detail because, depending on the content of their comments, that will in turn determine whether it's necessary to establish a contact group, an informal group, or maybe whether we can address the issue and get it solved in plenary.
Thank you very much, Chile. US, I'm coming back to you. Do you agree with the proposal just to sort this out here, if it's possible? May I have your understanding on this, please?
Thank you, Madam President. I'm certainly willing to give it a try. So if you're indulging me just one moment to make sure that I read them all in correctly. Oops. Okay. All right. And I apologize, Madam President, but there were, I know there were some versions of the CRP I saw, in advance, and I'm making sure I'm looking at the correct and final version. Okay. So in paragraph, the first preambular paragraph, we would propose to strike after June 1992, the phrase, particularly its principles 10 and 22, as we would support only a general reference to all resolutions. We would then also strike the end of the preambular paragraph from particularly its goal to the end of the paragraph. Then going down to the paragraph that begins, apologies. Going down to the paragraph that begins, request the Secretariat, subject to the availability of resources, so the final paragraph, we would change the phrase on the needs and priorities to, we would change that phrase to considerations. And otherwise, we would leave the text as is. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you so much, USA, for understanding and cooperation. Okay, thank you. With this in mind, I'm going to ask the Secretariat. I see Chile also, so before that, please, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We heard a second intervention by the delegate of the United States, and we didn't quite understand when he spoke about deleting one of the sentences in the preambular paragraph. The first comment is the one that refers to deleting principles 10 and 22. The second comment, as I said, we did not quite understand. And then we also understand, as the end of the statement, that he spoke about deleting necessities and priorities and replacing that with considerations. We'd request of the U.S. if they can clarify what their second amendment was in this suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chile. I was about to ask the Secretariat actually to read slowly the changes proposed, so I think this will clarify some of your questions. So, Secretariat, please, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I will read slowly, and please, if I did not capture your interventions properly, let me know. The first proposed change was on the first preambular paragraph to replace reaffirming by recalling. Then there was a requested deletion of the words particularly, its principle 10 and 22. And last, on the same paragraph, there was a request for deletion of the last phrase starting at particularly all the way to the end. As such, the paragraph would read, with the proposed amendments, recalling the Rio Declaration on Environment and Development of June 1992, as well as the United Nations General Assembly Resolution 70/1 of September 2015, entitled Transforming Our World, the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. And it would end here. On the second preambular paragraph, I took note of a correction, editorial correction made by Brazil yesterday, just to amend the title, the code of the resolution. There are 3 letters missing. It's RES, but this is purely editorial, and it was mentioned by Brazil yesterday when they introduced the CRP. An additional change that was proposed today was on an operative paragraph, and it's the paragraph that starts with encourages parties to support. It's the second operative paragraph, and it's to add the word organizations after indigenous peoples. The entire paragraph would remain unchanged with this addition of the word organizations after indigenous peoples. And finally, on the last paragraph, the paragraph that starts requests the Secretariat, subject to the availability of resources, there was a request to change the words on the needs and priorities and replace it by considerations. As such, I will read the entire paragraph with these amendments, these proposed amendments, and it reads, request the Secretariat, subject to the availability of resources, to compile views and to report back to the Conference of the Parties at its 6th meeting, considerations of indigenous peoples as well as local communities, and it goes unchanged until the end. And these are all the amendments, the proposed amendments that I captured, Madam President.
Thank you very much, Secretariat. Okay, so I hope you had some time to reflect on the proposals Are there any reactions on what was proposed? Chile, please.
Muchas gracias, señora presidenta.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Well, as far as our delegation is concerned, the changes that were proposed for the preamble are not major changes, so we could align ourselves with them. Perhaps the only request that we will make at this stage is to ask the European Union to be flexible and to leave the preamble paragraph in the beginning with the term reaffirming rather than recalling. And then, with respect to the proposed change to the last provision, we have certain doubts in terms of what we want to express with the term considerations. It's a concept which in fact changes its sense depending on the context, and I have the impression that we need a clearer text as the objective to be followed, and the word considerations is not at the same level. But for our delegation, the other changes are quite acceptable. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chile. I really appreciate the spirit of collaboration that everybody's showing. And in this moment, I think it's more appropriate to invite European Union, US, to actually have a informal meeting with the proponents of the CRP. And I'm requesting you to report back during the day that we are having with the final proposal in order to be able to adopt this decision. You, I see, you have, please.
Muchas gracias, señora presidenta.
Thank you very much, Chair. And thanks very much to GRULAC. As far as the European Union's member states are concerned, we believe that it's not really necessary to have that meeting because we are completely flexible. And if we retain the proposal for the fundamental principles that GRULAC has asked, we accept Chile's position to retain the word reaffirming. So we accept the term reaffirming as proposed by Chile.
Thank you very much, you. I would like to go back to Chile now to ask if the intervention from you clarified your position. So, do you need the Secretariat to read again the paragraph? Or, okay. Please, you have the floor.
Muchas gracias, señora Presidente.
Thank you very much, Madam President. In fact, if I understood this right, the European Union, as expressed by Spain, accepts our proposal to retain the word reaffirming rather than recalling. Thank you.
Okay, Chile, thank you for that. I do have one more question. It's related to the last paragraph. Would you like to try to solve this here, or would you need more consultation? So, Chile, I was just saying, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I think it would be advisable to hear from Canada, who is another of the co-sponsors of the CRP, and then to give me the floor, please.
Yes, please, Canada, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Canada would also like to have for better understanding from the US on why they would like to make this change to the last paragraph. We feel that the entire decision is to find out and identify what the needs and priorities are of indigenous peoples as well as local communities with regards to the effects of mercury in their health, livelihoods, culture, and knowledge. And by the US suggesting the word considerations, it completely changes the objective of what we are requesting the Secretariat to do. We feel that changing the word to considerations negates the whole intention of what we're trying to achieve with the CRP. So Canada very much would like to understand what the US point of view is and why they would like to change this to a more watered down version of what we would like to achieve. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Canada. Well, I'm going to propose you that maybe US, Canada, and GRULAC can have an informal meeting, discuss about this, and then report back to me. If you all agree on that, it will be... Okay, I have on my list still US followed by Chile, so I will try to give the floor to US now.
Thank you, Madam President. In response to the last question, our intent was certainly not to water down the decision. That was absolutely not what we want to do. We just thought that the word considerations would make the report maybe a little bit broader, but we are certainly, and that was in our mind just a way to, improve what we would receive from the Secretariat, but we certainly, we appreciate the flexibility of the proponents regarding our amendments to the preambular paragraph. And I think that we can be flexible and we can retain the proposed language on this paragraph. Thank you.
Thank you very much, US. Okay, thank you very much for your spirit of compromise and negotiations. So I will now give the floor again to Secretariat to read what was changed and what is exactly the text, and then we will continue.
Thank you, Madam President. I will read as amended. The first preambular paragraph would read, reaffirming the Rio Declaration on Environment and Development of June 1992, as well as the United Nations General Assembly Resolution 70/1 of September 2015, entitled Transforming Our World, the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. This would end the paragraph. And there is another amendment on the second operative paragraph, starting with encourages parties to support. And that's the addition of the word organizations, but I will read the entire paragraph. Encourages parties to support, as appropriate, participation of indigenous peoples' organizations, as well as local communities and other relevant stakeholders in meetings of the Conference of the Parties, in meetings of the Conference of the Parties and other related processes. Again, the only change is to add organizations after indigenous peoples. And these are all the changes that I would have.
Thank you very much, Secretariat. I note support by parties in order to adopt a decision in this matter. So therefore, I propose that the COP adopts the CRP with the changes that were just read out by the Secretariat, pending confirmation from the budget contact group that any budgetary implications have been accommodated in the budget for 2024-2025, and with the understanding that the decision will go through the formal UN editorial process. Are there any objections? I see none. So it is adopted. Thank you very much. Excellent. Thank you very much for your cooperation. So this agenda item is not finalized yet, as we have one draft decision that needs to further consideration, and we will be coming back to that during the meeting. Good. So I now turn to the agenda item 6, Program of Work and Budget. And I will now invite the Secretariat to introduce the documents prepared for this agenda item.
Thank you, Madam President. So the documents relevant to this agenda items are listed on the screen. So it's namely document 23, as well as INF document 35 and INF document 36. As requested by the Conference of the Parties to the Minamata Convention in its decision MC4/13, the Executive Secretary has prepared and submitted to the 5th meeting a budget for the biennium 2024 to 2025. So that's document 23. The document presents two budget scenarios, one maintaining the operational budget at the 2022 to 2023 level in nominal terms, and one reflecting the changes to that scenario that are required to meet the projected needs and the related costs, without exceeding a 5% increase over the 2022 to 2023 level in nominal terms. The budget document includes, among other things, the costs of the 6th meeting of the Conference of the Parties, as well as costs of the core staff and information on the projected cash balance. The budget activity fact sheets set out further details on the proposed activities of the proposed program of work and budget. That's INF document 36. For the purpose of clarity, the voluntary funded activities are tagged with the phrase subject to availability of resources in the proposed program of work and budget for the biennium 2024 to 2025, both in the fact sheets and in each of the draft programmatic decisions. If this phrase does not appear, the activity is intended to be wholly funded from the General Trust Fund. In addition, activities that can be solely carried out by the existing staff resources are tagged with the phrase staff costs. The Conference of the Parties is invited to consider and approve the program of work and budget for the 2024 to 2025 biennium. This includes the approval of the budget for the General Trust Fund for the 2024 to 2025 biennium, the adoption of the indicative scale of assessments for the apportionment of expenses, the agreement on the estimates for the Special Trust Fund for the 24-25 biennium, the invitation of parties and non-parties to contribute to the specific trust fund, and the request to the Executive Secretary to prepare a draft program of work and budget for the 2026 to 2027 biennium. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Secretariat, for this introduction. Dear participants, so please note that there will be a further opportunity to discuss matters in detail, as I will propose a contact group on program of work and budget. But before doing so, it will be important to hear initial and general considerations from parties on the proposed decision and the supporting documents prepared by the Secretariat. I wish to recall here that matters of budget of the Minamata Convention are matters for the parties only. With this, I will open the floor for comments. I have first on my list Switzerland. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. We would like to thank the Secretariat for having prepared the budget scenarios and the budget fact sheets. Switzerland favors a budget that enables the Secretariat to fulfill its mandate given by the parties. In particular, we need to ensure that core elements of the Convention are funded by core contributions. Moreover, Switzerland advocates for a close collaboration of the Minamata Secretariat and the Secretariat of the Basel, Rotterdam and Stockholm Conventions to make full use of the abundant knowledge and expertise of the Chemicals and Waste Cluster in Geneva, and in order to implement Secretariat activities in a cost-efficient manner. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Switzerland. I have European Union on my list. Please, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. The European Union and its member states would like to thank the Secretariat for the document MC COP5/23 on the program of work and budget, and the document UNEP MC/COP5/INF/36 for providing a proposal of operational budgets for the two funding scenarios for the biennium 2024-2025 and their additional budget activity fact sheets. We believe that the documents provide a good basis for further consideration in a contact group formed for this respect. Some matters need further clarification, and the European Union and its member states will also suggest some amendments in the draft decision. The EU and its member states seek clarification from the Secretariat on specific choices in relation to the placement of core activities outside of the core budget and the exclusion of the due P3 position in both presented budget scenarios. We look forward to discussions on the draft decision. We anticipate adopting a program of work and budget this week that will facilitate the implementation of core functions and enable optimal implementation of the activities agreed at this conference of the parties. Thank you.
Thank you very much, you. Botswana, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Distinguished participants, the Africa region wish to thank the Secretariat for its preparatory work on program of work and budget and the various pre-meeting online information sessions. The Africa region is cognizant of the importance of adequate funding to ensure that the Convention delivers on its mandate. Funding to the Africa region is in support of the budget scenario, reflecting the changes to that scenario that will be required to meet the projected needs and the related costs or savings without exceeding a 5% increase over the 2022-2023 level in nominal terms, the 5% scenario. Adequate funding will enable the Secretariat adequately support full participation of representatives, including those from developing countries and countries with economies in transition. In the various meetings, replenish the operational costs, prove of adequate support for parties to fulfill their commitments under the Convention, and strengthen the Secretariat's role in coordinating national domestication of the Minamata Convention on Mercury. I thank you, Madam President.
Thank you very much, Botswana. South Africa, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Firstly, we do align ourselves with the statement made by Botswana on behalf of the Africa region. We would like to thank the Secretariat for the budget scenarios that they have prepared. Madam President, the program of work and budget need to critically reflect the allocation of adequate resources for the work identified to be carried out intersessionally. This delegation supports the budget that will enable the Secretariat to carry out its duties and responsibilities as per the decision of the parties. And we will participate in further discussions of the program of work and the budget in the contact group that you will establish. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you very much, South Africa. Uganda, followed by Japan.
Thank you very much, Madam President. The government of Uganda aligns itself with Botswana's submission on behalf of the Africa region. Government of Uganda wishes to thank the Secretariat for its preparatory work on program of work and budget, and therefore is in support of the budget scenario that will be required to meet the projected needs and the related costs to enable the Secretariat adequately implement its obligations under the Minamata Convention on Mercury. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now I'm giving the floor to Japan, and I'm actually closing the list of speakers because you will have a chance to have intensive discussions during the contact group sessions. So Japan, please.
Thank you, Madam President. And I would like to also join the others in thanking the Secretariat for the introduction and compiling document, and even advanced online briefing on the program of work and proposed budget. We have carefully studied two scenarios, zero nominal growth and 5% scenario. We found that Secretariat has made every effort on how to save and cut costs on certain activities, which we appreciate. However, in the zero nominal growth-based scenario, some activities such as effectiveness evaluation and national reporting are not covered by the General Trust Fund. These activities are important measures for the implementation of the treaty, and therefore we consider such essential activities should be covered by the General Trust Fund rather than special trust funds. We may have some other points we may need to seek clarification, but we look forward to further discussions in the contact group. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Japan. I'm going to indulge UK to take the floor, but after that, I'm really closing the list. So UK, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. The UK would like to thank the Secretariat for preparing the budget scenarios for consideration by parties, and we look forward to detailed and productive discussions in a contact group. We firmly believe that the core activities under the Convention, particularly those pertaining to effectiveness evaluation and national reporting, should be funded through core contributions to ensure that they can take place. We'll continue to scrutinise the proposals closely, and we remain open to finding efficiencies where they can be identified. And we look forward to working collaboratively with parties in the coming days to ensure that the budget for the 24-25 biennium offers value for money, whilst allowing the Secretariat to function effectively and to undertake the vital work involved in implementing the Minamata Convention's objectives. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you very much, UK. So I've noted that all the parties that took the floor express the willing to continue to discuss this, and they would like to also discuss the proposed decision set out in document 23. So in this regard, I propose to set up a contact group on program of work and budget. And I also propose that the mandate of the contact group is to arrive to an agreed proposal for a decision on the program of work and budget by deliberating on the proposed budgetary elements of the program of work and budget for 2024-2025. The contact group will also be tasked to confirm that the activities included in draft decisions have been taken into account in the program of work and budget for the next biennium, and that the decision had no financial implications. So I have to apologize. I think I made a mistake, so I will read again the mandate. The contact group will be tasked to confirm that the activities included in draft decisions have been taken into account in the program of work and budget for 2024-2025, or that the decision has no financial implication. With this, I'm telling you that the contact group will start its work today during the lunchtime from 1 p.m. until 3 p.m. and after 1 hour break, will continue the work from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. and may also have a possibility for an evening session. The meeting will be in conference room 4 in the basement. Regarding the evening session, this will be only confirmed in the afternoon plenary based on the progress achieved on other agenda items. The co-chair of the contact group will report back to plenary on Wednesday, 1st of November on the progress achieved. The contact group is to conclude its work by the evening of Thursday, 2nd of November, including to finalize the draft decision by that time. We are considered the agreed decision on Friday in plenary for adoption. Is there any objection of what I've just read? I see Chile, please.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. We would like to hear the mandate read out once again, please.
Okay, so the mandate of the contact group is to arrive at an agreed proposal for a decision on the program of work and budget by deliberating on the proposed budgetary elements of the program of work and budget for 2024-2025. The contact group will also be tasked to confirm that the activities included in draft decisions have been taken into account in the program of work and budget for 2024-2025, or that the decision has no financial implications. Please, Chile.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Now we got it. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to ask again if there are any objections on this proposal. If not, we will proceed that way. So, I would like to remind you that the contact group is for parties only. However, I would like to open the participation in the contact group also to the 3 countries who have concluded the ratification process, but for whom the convention will enter into force after COP5. This is because these future parties will be required to contribute for the 2024-2025 budget. I suggest these countries may participate in the work of the contact group as observers. Is there any objection? I see no objection, so it is agreed. Thank you. The contact group on program of work and budget will need co-chairs, of course. And after consultation with the Bureau, I propose that Maria del Mar Solano Trejos from Costa Rica and Premzil Stepanek from Czechia are the co-chairs of the contact group. Are there any objections to this proposal? I see none. Thank you. We will proceed this way. Very well. So it is decided. Maria del Mar Solano Trejos and Premzil Stepanek, thank you for taking on this very important task. Sandra Rücker, Administrative Officer of the Secretariat, will support the work of the contact group. I very much look forward to hear from your efforts and results on Wednesday. Thank you very much. Okay, delegates. I now turn to update on credentials. I would like to recall that the report on credentials for COP5 is to be adopted on Thursday. Credentials were to have reached the Secretariat by 10 a.m. today. I invite Cheryl Eugene Saint-Romain, Chair of the Credentials Committee, to take the floor on the status of credentials on behalf of the Bureau. Cheryl, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Good day, colleagues. The representatives of 113 parties have been registered to participate in the 5th meeting of the Conference of the Parties to the Minamata Convention on Mercury in Geneva, Switzerland, and are present at the current meeting. In total, 100 parties submitted credentials of their respective representatives, which were issued by the head of state or government or the Minister of Foreign Affairs, and were therefore found to be in order. 89 of these credentials were originals, while 11 were copies, which were accepted with the understanding that the originals will be submitted as soon as possible. The following 13 parties have not yet submitted credentials for their representatives: Albania, Cameroon, Chad, Comoros, Republic of the Congo, Guinea, Iraq, Mali, Mauritania, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Senegal, and Zimbabwe. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Cheryl, for the update. And now let us turn our attention to the other substantive agenda items of this session. We move on to item 4J, National Reporting, and item 4I, Implementation and Compliance Committee. We will begin with item 4J, National Reporting, and 4A, the work of the Implementation and Compliance Committee. I note here that I have asked the Secretariat to present these two agenda items together, as was previously done in various document briefings and during the regional meetings. This is because the scope is to consider the first full national reports received under agenda item 4J, and these same reports will also the focus of work of the Implementation and Compliance Committee during the intersessional period. And so, under agenda item 4I, we will also hear from the chair of the Implementation and Compliance Committee on the work of the committee and its recommendation put forward to the COP, in particular as related to reporting, based on its review of the full national reports. After both agenda items are introduced, I will open the floor for intervention. Without outline of the overall approach, I request now the Secretariat to introduce the first document under agenda item 4J on national reporting. Please.
Thank you, Madam President. One working document with two addenda has been presented for COP5 on national reporting. Document 15 includes in section 2 the Secretariat's periodic report to the Conference of the Parties based on the information received pursuant to Articles 15 and 21, prepared pursuant to paragraph E of Article 24. It also includes proposed amendments to the reporting format, which are set out in Addendum 1, and draft reporting guidance, which is set out in Addendum 2. The annex to Document 5 sets out a draft decision for the consideration of the COP. To complement this document, I also wish to draw your attention to Information Document 20, which summarizes the information submitted in the full reports, and Information Document 21, which tabulates the responses to the full reports by parties. The information contained in Inf 20 and Inf 21 reflect the situation until 15 July 2023. The submitted national reports that are considered by the Secretariat to be complete and are available on the Convention's website. Addendum 1 to Document 15 presents the proposed amendments to the reporting format arising from Decision MC4/3, the recommendations of the ICC, and additional proposals for the Secretariat to amend the reporting format based on Decision MC4/8. Addendum 2 to Document 15 contains comments received from parties and the observations of the ICC on the draft reporting guidance in accordance with decision MC4/8. The suggested new text is underlined and the deleted text is in strike-through. It should be noted that some of the concerns were actually proposals to amend the reporting format rather than the draft guidance. Accordingly, these were taken into account in the preparation of document 15-1. Further, the Secretariat has noticed an editorial error at the end of question 3.4 in the draft reporting guidance and issued yesterday a technical revision that corrects the omission. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Secretariat. We all know that reporting is a key obligation for all parties, and I am very impressed by the reporting rate of 95% of the full reports that we were due 31st of December 2021. I welcome these achievements by parties. I now turn to agenda item 4I on the Implementation and Compliance Committee. As you know already, the ICC is established by Article 15 to promote the implementation and review compliance with all provisions of the Convention. The committee examines both individual and systemic issues of implementation and compliance and can make recommendations as appropriate to the Conference of the Parties. I now invite Annick Bedouin of Canada as the elected chair of the committee to introduce the committee's report on its work in the intersessional period between COP4 and COP5. Annick, you have the floor.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam President. I'm going to give the floor to Ms. Paulina McKelly, who will read out the report on the activities of the committee during the intersessional period, because she chaired the meeting, the two meetings that took place between the 4th and the 5th COPs. Thank you.
Yes, Paulina, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Agradezco la oportunidad.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I welcome the opportunity to present the report for the intersessional period between COP4 and COP5, a report of the Compliance Committee. The committee met twice during the intersessional period, remotely between the 14th and 15th of September in 2022, and a face-to-face meeting 7 to 9 March in 2023 here in Geneva. Allow me, Madam Chair, to recognize the work of my colleague Itsuki Kuroga from Japan, who acted as the rapporteur for both of those meetings. During both those meetings, the committee addressed issues of implementation and compliance on the basis of the national reports that had been provided in keeping with Article 21. In absence of written contributions by the parties as regards their own compliance or at the request of the Conference of the Parties. The Implementation and Compliance Committee studied an analysis of the first completed national reports that had been prepared by the Secretariat in keeping with paragraph 25, letter B, of the committee's mandate. And on behalf of the committee, I would like to express my thanks to the Secretariat for their invaluable support, and in particular for the detailed analysis as well as for the reports. These analyses provided the committee valuable information as to the work of the parties regarding the sending of their reports, and the analysis also outlined the specific difficulties that arose from each of the 43 questions, and in particular sections C, D, and E regarding the format for report presentation. I would also like to recognize the work as well as the commitment by all of the committee's members in reviewing and providing comments on the extensive documentation that was provided by the Secretariat. I would like to say thanks to all of my colleagues for their professionalism and for their constructive contributions. I would also like to especially recognize the members of the committee that worked with the deep understanding of the important role that this committee plays in implementation and in the review of compliance of the Minamata Convention provisions. They also addressed specific issues and systemic issues regarding implementation and compliance of the Minamata Convention in each of the national treaties. The committee reached a series of recommendations to submit to the consideration of this COP5, and this in regard to various of the convention articles. The detail of these recommendations can be seen in full in the INF 14 document, which includes the report of the committee to the Conference of the Party, reporting on the compliance of its functions. Many of the recommendations have as their purpose to clarify the questions in the report format. Others address more extensive implementation issues. And still others address the Conference of the Parties, providing information on systemic issues that have been identified in the various parties' national reports. The committee also agreed to obtain information via the Secretariat on numerous elements where it appeared obvious that the parties did not have a clear picture of the information they were supposed to provide, or that there were challenges to present the information that had been requested. The ICC recognized that some issues must be maintained under review in keeping of what is established by the Conference of the Parties in the course of this meeting. And also this applies to future reports by the parties. I would like to thank you, Madam, for the opportunity to provide this information on behalf of the ICC Committee.
Thank you very much. I would like to thank both Annick Bedouin and Pauline Arikelme for their work and dedication as current and former chairs of the committee. And allow me, please, also to thank the members of the committee for their valuable contribution to the substantive discussions across the agenda items that we are considering this week. I think that the report by the Secretariat shows the high level of commitment of parties in implementing the Convention. The recommendations of the Implementation and Compliance Committee are valuable in identifying some issues that will help us do even better in the future. I note with appreciation that the Secretariat integrated the recommendations of the committee into the suggested actions under various agenda items. I invite the Secretariat to further explain this matter.
Thank you, Madam President. Depending on their relevance to specific agenda items to be considered by the Conference of the Parties, the Secretariat integrated the recommendations of the committee under the suggested actions of the following agenda items in addition to national reporting. Document 3 on mercury supply sources and trade to be considered next on the agenda item 4A. Document 12 on the review of the financial mechanism that was already considered on the agenda item 4G. Document 13 on capacity building, technical assistance and technology transfer that was also already considered on the agenda item 4H. And finally, document 21 on international cooperation and coordination to be considered on the agenda item 5. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Secretariat. So the conference has before it one document on national reporting, namely document 5/15, with two addenda, 15/add1 and 15/add2. A draft decision on national reporting is included in the annex to document 15. In its consideration of the draft decision, the Conference of the Party is invited to take note of document 14, the report of the Implementation and Compliance Committee, which includes the committee's recommendation. I now would like to open the floor for your intervention, and I will give priority in the speakers list to parties first. I see already on my list Pakistan, followed by Botswana. Pakistan, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Pakistan would like to appreciate the Secretariat for supporting parties in fulfilling their obligation to report, including through information sessions, the online reporting tool, and the development of the draft reporting guidance. Pakistan would also like to suggest that webinars and training sessions for national reporting may be continued by the Secretariat, particularly for the developing countries, LDCs and SIDS, to enhance their capacity building in order to enable them to report effectively. In addition, there is no provision for the recovery and recycling of mercury from mercury-added products in the reporting format provided by the Secretariat. The same may be included in the format. Pakistan supports the draft decision in the document MC COP 5/15. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you very much, Pakistan, for your intervention. I'm giving the floor now to Botswana, followed by the European Union.
Sorry, Madam President. Distinguished participants, the Africa region would like to begin by congratulating the Secretariat for the work done to assist parties in the preparation and submission of their reports on the implementation of the Convention, including the various sessions to share comments, lessons learned on previous reports, and on access to the reporting tool. The region knows with satisfaction that the Secretariat has provided guidance on the issues contained in the reporting format and describes the materials, tools, and other resources available to parties for the preparation of their reports. As pointed out, most African states parties to the Convention submitted their full reports within the required deadline. This reflects the region's interest in mercury pollution issues. However, it is important to highlight the difficulties experienced by the region in collecting data in order to obtain information at the national level to inform those reports. Since the government often does not have control over the activities related to the Convention on its territory unless the initiative of the activity comes from the state side. The region is therefore asking the COP to take into account specific regional issues, in particular those related to national data collection. The Africa region also commends the Implementation and Compliance Committee for their guidance for the inclusion of the various proposed amendments in the reporting form to allow for the collection of information on action taken on the provisions added by the amendments to Annex A of the Convention. The region supports the efforts of the Secretariat and urges parties to submit their second abridged report to allow further action to implement the Convention's commitments. I thank you, Madam President.
Thank you very much, Botswana. European Union, followed by United States of America.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Regarding agenda item 4J on national reporting, the European Union and its member states would like to express their thanks to the Secretariat of the Minamata Convention for its efforts in helping parties fulfill their obligations of national reporting, and in particular through the innovative use of report presentation platforms online and also video presentations that have been useful for the parties to present their national reports. We would also like to thank the Secretariat's proposal regarding the amendment of the report in order to reflect these amendments in the report presentation description, in keeping with what's established in document UNEP MC/COP/15. We would also support the guidelines aimed at completing the report presentation format as is presented in document UNEP/MC/COP5/15/add2. We also express our agreement in having the amendments reflected in the presentation format as was presented in the corresponding guidelines. We are convinced that these amendments will significantly contribute to the functioning of the Convention. As regards item 4I on the ICC, the European Union and its member states would like to thank the ICC for its report and for the very valuable recommendations it contains. We believe that the recommendations of the ICC are very useful guidelines for the COP's decisions regarding many agenda items. And we also would like to thank the Secretariat for including the recommendations in several of the working documents. Furthermore, Madam, we would like to express our gratitude for the observations made by the ICC concerning the review of small-scale artisanal mining in 2023. The European Union and its member states very much appreciate the work of the committee and consider that it plays a central role in the development and subsequent implementation of the Minamata Convention. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, European Union. United States next, followed by Colombia.
The United States would like to intervene at this time on the national reporting agenda item, and we will come back separately with some comments on the ICC agenda item. The United States would like to express its appreciation to the Secretariat for the hard work done to ensure a successful first reporting cycle, as well as to the ICC for its report. We were also pleased to see the list of the Secretariat's activities to support the upcoming short report deadline. Achieving such a high reporting rate does not just happen. Thank you for your efforts, both past and yet to come, before the end of the year. The draft decision on national reporting is generally acceptable to the United States, although we have a number of comments to provide on the draft decision, as well as on the reporting format and the reporting guidance. The United States also appreciated the Secretariat highlighting the strong progress in specific areas of the Convention, particularly with respect to the obligations to phase out the use of mercury in chlor-alkali. The United States is pleased to report that one of its 2 remaining chlor-alkali facilities has converted to a non-mercury process, leaving us with only 1 remaining facility. We note in particular the concern that parties have not provided complete information on the number of facilities and the estimated amount of mercury used in the processes listed in Part 2 of Annex B. While the United States would like to see the small change in paragraph 4 of the draft decision on this issue, we nevertheless strongly support such reporting. We would also note that we are of the view that the footnotes should also be deleted in the final decision. With respect to the reporting format, we noted that there are 3 scenarios for which the Secretariat has proposed edits. First, as a result of the addition of new mercury-added products to Annex A at COP 4.2. Second, as a result of the Secretariat's experience with the first reporting cycle and the ICC's recommendations. And third, changes proposed in submissions by parties, including the United States and others. The United States generally supports the recommendations to amend the reporting format, but has specific questions or concerns on question 4.3, question 3.5, and for questions 17.1, 18.1, and 19.1, where the United States has strong reservations about the value of the additional or more detailed information being requested, as we are concerned that these proposals may make it harder to report and more burdensome than necessary. We look forward to discussing our suggestions and concern for the reporting format this week. The United States also supports the adoption of the reporting guidance, subject to a few comments and proposed changes. We would also like to discuss whether it might be possible to consider whether this COP might be able to take into account the changes that could be needed to the reporting format and the reporting guidance to reflect the decisions we make this week, as opposed to waiting for 2 years to make those changes. We would be interested in views from other parties on this issue. Again, we would like to express our appreciation to the Secretariat and the ICC for their efforts to ensure that this convention has the highest reporting rate possible, and we look forward to participating in whatever group is formed to discuss the necessary changes to the reporting format and to the reporting guidance this week prior to their adoption. Thank you.
Thank you very much, US. I just want to remind you that I said in my opening of this topic that we will consider these two subjects together. So if it's okay with you, you can have the statement on ICC continuing your previous one. Thank you. You have the floor, US.
Thank you, Madam President, for indulging this two-part intervention. This delegation would like to sincerely thank the ICC for its hard work over the course of 2 meetings since COP 4.2. Having carefully studied the ICC's recommendations to the COP as laid out in the pre-meeting documents for the ICC agenda item, we did have some questions regarding the basis for certain recommendations pertaining to financial and technical assistance. In the view of this delegation, the ICC's mandate under its terms of reference is to examine individual and systemic issues of implementation and compliance. And it can examine such issues on the basis of national reporting under Article 21, which is indeed what happened at the last 2 ICC meetings. So in line with the terms of reference, when the ICC identifies such an implementation or compliance issue, whether it pertains to an individual party or is more systemic in nature, the ICC may make recommendations to the COP intended to address that particular issue. For example, paragraph 23 of the ICC's terms of reference mentions that the committee can make recommendations to the COP regarding, quote, targeted capacity building, financial and technical assistance, as well as technology transfer. I pause on the word targeted because looking at some of the more general recommendations on financial and technical assistance that are included in the ICC's report, we did have some questions regarding whether those recommendations were indeed targeted to any particular issue of implementation or compliance. So with that in mind, this delegation would simply request that in its future work, the committee consider the need for any recommendations to the COP to be clearly connected to specific issues of compliance or implementation that are identified and examined by the committee. And relatedly, it would be helpful to see a detailed explanation in the ICC's report regarding the basis for each ICC recommendation to the COP with regard to the terms of reference and the specific compliance or implementation issue being addressed. With all of that said, we would like to again extend our sincere gratitude to the ICC and the Secretariat for the extensive and thorough work that they have done under this agenda item. Thank you.
Thank you very much, United States of America. Now I move on to Colombia, followed by Uganda.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. For our delegation, we welcome that the compliance rate, as described in Article 21 of the Minamata Convention, has reached a 95% level. In general terms, we consider this to be a major achievement by the parties as compared to other conventions, in particular as regards chemicals. Colombia would like to express its gratitude to all states' parties that provided their national reports, and we would likewise like to again congratulate the members of the GRULAC region, whose reporting level reached 100%. In addition to that, Madam Chair, we would like to recognize the work undertaken by the Secretariat of the Convention through the support it provided to the parties in the drafting of these documents, and we would like to express our thanks to the ICC and in particular to the co-facilitators of the ICC for the excellent job they did in reviewing all the national reports. Thanks to this exercise, the Conference of the Parties will be in a position to adopt well-informed decisions on the most urgent matters regarding the application of the Convention by its state parties. Colombia would also like to support the recommendations by the ICC aimed at improving the reporting process. Some elements of the Convention, such as the strengthening of capacities or international cooperation and coordination, are part of those subjects. We would like to invite other parties to continue with drafting the reports and sending them in, and also encourage the Secretariat to continue providing its very valuable support for compliance with this process. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Colombia. I have next on my list Uganda, followed by Nigeria. Uganda, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Government of Uganda aligns itself to Botswana's submission on behalf of the Africa region. Government of Uganda wishes to thank the Secretariat for the effort in improving national reporting and for synthesizing the reported on information to guide global and national decision-making in making Mercury history. However, effective national reporting is very much linked to other key provisions of the Minamata Convention on Mercury, which among others includes capacity building, technical assistance, and technology transfer. For instance, quantitative national reporting is limited by inadequate tools for data collection, the non-accredited laboratories, especially for mercury testing, limited baseline information on mercury sources, and the efficient intersectoral monitoring coordination mechanisms that would support Minamata reporting. A real-time online reporting tool by national government sectors whose mandate covers mercury management may be considered in future. This notwithstanding, Government of Uganda supports the Secretariat's proposal on national reporting and supports its adoption at COP5. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Uganda. I'm now giving the floor to Nigeria, followed by Chile.
Thank you, Madam President. The government of Nigeria acknowledges the hard work of the Implementation and Compliance Committee, especially in reviewing the full national reports prepared by the Secretariat. We are in support of the chair of the committee sending letters to parties that had not submitted their national reports that were due by 31st December 2021 to do so. Nigeria appreciates the Secretariat for its good efforts in developing the revised amendments to the reporting format and the draft guidance for completing the national reporting format for the Minamata Convention on Mercury. Nigeria aligns with the position of the African Group and supports an amendment that will further improve communications between parties and the Secretariat of the Minamata Convention on Mercury, considering that effective national reporting will bridge the gaps between parties and the Secretariat and will further enhance the implementation of the Convention. We also support the adoption of the draft guidance for completing the national reporting format for the Minamata Convention on Mercury. I thank you, Madam President.
Thank you very much, Nigeria. Chile follow.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would briefly like to state that we are fully committed to inform on our progress in the application of the Minamata Convention, and that for that reason we are taking all the necessary measures in order to draft our second report. I would also like to point out that 100% of the reports of our region have been provided. We also would like to refer to the improvements in the platforms concerning the BRS conventions, and in that regard we would like to support the amendment proposals that have been made for the reporting format. We would like to underscore the work of the ICC, which we believe has been crucial for the implementation of the convention. We believe that this is very important in reaching the established objectives, and this is proven in the high level of compliance as regards submission of reports. The recommendations by the ICC will indeed allow us to take educated decisions concerning the needs of the various developing countries. Last of all, Madam Chair, I would like to express our gratitude for the trust that all of the parties present here have placed in Chile by entrusting us with the chairmanship of this committee. And in that regard, I would also like to express our gratitude to the chair herself for fulfilling such an important job. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chile. And last on my list, Canada. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. So Canada, first of all, would like to thank the Secretariat for their tremendous effort in facilitating this very high rate of reporting. It's very commendable and very encouraging to see that we have a 95% reporting rate. We also appreciate the work of the ICC in doing the analysis of parties' reports, as well as making recommendations to help parties further improve their reporting and the details within their reports. Canada would like to suggest some improvements to the national reporting format as well as the guidance document. So we would very much appreciate being involved in any discussions that may take place on the reporting format and on the guidance as well, be it in an informal setting or a small group setting. And with that, we also would like to express that we are very grateful to the Secretariat for developing this guidance, and we would like to encourage parties to use the guidance when completing their national reports. We also suggest that the guidance should be continually updated and improved after each reporting cycle, based on the comments received from parties and the ICC or other relevant bodies. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Canada. I see India on my list. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. First of all, I echo with the sentiments of the other colleague, congratulating Secretariat for for submission of national reports by 117 parties out of 123 parties. India supports adoption of draft decision MC/COP5/15 regarding adoption of amendments to the national reporting format and reporting guidance document for use by parties. We appreciate the work carried out by the Implementation Committee and endeavor of the Secretariat of Minamata Convention to make the national reporting more specific and removing ambiguities, and also incorporating latest amendment adopted in the previous COP in the reporting format regarding the measures taken and obligation met under the convention. Would like to echo with the other distinguished colleague about the possibility of further discussion on the proposed reporting formats and the guidance document. I thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, India. Now, if you allow me, I will request at least 60 seconds to move forward. Thank you very much. Distinguished delegates, thank you for allowing me a short break to clarify exactly what is going to be proposed as a way forward. So I've heard many parties echo commending the high rate of reporting and also requesting the Secretariat to continue their activities to support parties in fulfilling the reporting obligations. I also heard that parties recognizing the work of the Implementation and Compliance Committee and one party expressing the view related to the future work of the ICC. I heard general support from parties to the adoption of the proposed changes to the reporting format. A few parties requested some changes to be made to the proposed amendments to questions, including questions 4.3, 3.5, 17.1, 18.1, and 19.1. There is also general support to the proposed reporting guidance. Still, some parties have proposed edits to the draft guidance. The draft decision itself also has received support, and there are only some suggestions related to removing footnotes and fine-tuning paragraph 4. I do believe that we are close to agreeing on the proposed decision and its annexes, and I suggest the following. I propose to establish a Friends of the President to reach agreement on the unresolvable issues related to the proposed amendments to the reporting format and draft reporting guidance. I invite United States of America, Canada, India, who raised comments on the proposed amendments to join the Friends of the President group. I also propose that Friends of the President to be facilitated by Paulina Riquelme of Chile. Regarding the draft decision, I invite parties who have comments to send them to the Secretariat and ask the Secretariat to take them into account in finalizing the draft decision for further consideration at plenary. Are there any objections to my proposal? Chile, you have the floor.
Believe that for the sake of transparency, to include in the facilitator's role the chair of the ICC from Canada. Normally we use 2 co-facilitators, one from a developed country, one from a developing country. Also, we would like to hear from you when this group has to report back to plenary. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chile, for this. Now I'm going to Canada and ask if the current chair of the ICC is available to participate. So I see nodding, no need to. Thank you very much. So, then I move on to Saudi Arabia. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. The delegation of the Kingdom should like to thank all the parties that have submitted their national reports, as well as thanking the Secretariat for following up. We suggest that we set up a formal contact group. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Saudi Arabia. When a Friends of the President group is formed, it's also open for the parties that they have constructive comments or suggestions to join. So in order to clarify this, if you do have important comments that and you would like to add, to the group, you are invited to join this Friends of the President group. Please, Saudi Arabia.
So this request was being accessible for all parties to be participated?
It is referring especially to the parties that have constructive comments to the documents that are discussed in the group. Saudi Arabia, you still want to take the floor? Please, you have it.
وفد المملكة العربية.
The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia would like to suggest the setting up of a contact group in order to review the whole report. We will be in need of more time to consider the comments and the proposals and to participate actively in the discussions. Thank you.
So basically now on the floor there are two options, Friends of the President and a proposed contact group by Saudi Arabia. So I'm just looking in the room and ask, what do you think is the best way forward on this topic? Chile, please.
Thank you, Madam President. You don't have to take a decision right now. You can probably adjourn this meeting and we can come back at 3 o'clock and you can state your decision by then. We don't need to hurry.
Canada, please, followed by Saudi Arabia.
Thank you, Madam President. It's our understanding that the Friends of the President group is actually open to any party who's interested. So Saudi Arabia is welcome to participate in a Friends of the President group. And in fact, there's no real difference from a contact group with a Friends of the President group. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Canada. Saudi Arabia.
Thank you, Madam President. The delegation of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia has no objection to join the contact group of the Friends of the President in the discussion, provided that the discussion is open to all parties who wish to participate. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, thank you very much for this. So having this in mind, I do propose to have this Friend of the President group formed, and the co-chairs will be from Chile and Canada. So thank you very much. Just to let you know that the interpretation will end in 10 minutes.
With respect, lady, I apologize. There's this head of team speaking. Can you hear me? No, it's already 10 minutes. Can you hear me? It's head of team speaking, right? And it's already 10 minutes past 1. My authority is that I cannot extend the time because Madam President, can you hear me? This is head of team speaking, right? You were asking for 10 minutes more. It is now already 1 hour and 10 minutes. My authority does not allow me to go beyond that time, with apologies. So we have to discontinue.
So, seems like the interpretation ended already, so I'm trying to be fast. Just to let you know that we are kind of late in our deliberation this morning, and we started a little bit late, so I propose to reshuffle the agenda for today as follows. We will adjourn the morning plenary, and in the afternoon plenary, we will start with the agenda item 4E on waste, followed by agenda item 4K, effectiveness evaluation, and agenda item 4A on supply and trade. We will take agenda items 4D and E on emissions and releases in the afternoon plenary if time allows. Otherwise, these two items will be considered in the Wednesday morning plenary. And of course, let me also invite you to attend, if you have the possibility, the second special event of COP5 taking place today during the lunch break, entitled Mercury in Cosmetics, More Than What Meets the Eye. This event is co-hosted by the Global Environmental Facility and the United Nations Environment Programme. Just let me now inform you that we can allocate time to the work of, for the work of Friends of the President group on reporting. This will require to adjust the time of the work of the budget contact group I announced earlier, and I will ask the Secretariat to inform you.
The Friends of the President group on reporting will meet from 1330 to 1600 in room 9, level 2. The budget contact group is meeting in room 4 from 1300 to 1630. Okay, we will inform further on the arrangements at the beginning of afternoon plenary. Thank you.
Thank you for your patience, and I'm announcing you that I'm going to adjourn the meeting, and we will resume at 3 p.m. today. Thank you.